Hello, and thank you so much for joining us again. This is WJ Live, powered by the Western Journal. We've got a lot of things to talk about, so real quick, let's get some introductions in. My name is Brian Chai. I am the, manager of publishing operations. Listen, they change my title like every other week. To my left, we have Michael D. Austin, the ace reporter now.
What does the D stand for, Brian?
I can't, dude, people might steal your identity if they're watching.
Pretends like he knows me.
Okay, that is correct, though. It is D.
It is D. You got that part right.
Yeah, and I know what it stands for. I just don't want your identity to be stolen. To my right, writer, reporter, all-around cool guy, Eric Nanaman. Thank you so much for joining us today, guys.
Yes.
So I just want to go and get this started off with a healthy bit of outrage, because that's always my favorite thing to peddle. If you have not been keeping up with it, and frankly, I'm not a huge track and field fan, so I have not, but the qualifiers have been going on in Eugene, Oregon over the weekend, and it caused a bit of a scene when hammer thrower Gwen Berry, which...
Yes.
Let me just side note, that is a pretty cool athlete name. Gwen Berry? That's cool.
Gwen Berry.
But what she did was not so cool. As she was getting her third place medal, she did qualify by virtue of being in third place. She did qualify for Team USA. But while she was doing that, the national anthem was playing. And instead of standing at attention, hand over her heart like any honorable American should be doing during the national anthem, she decided to do something a little different, and she got a lot of attention for it. I'm going to go and bring up a picture real quick. She tweeted this out saying, "Stop playing with me," because people were justifiably upset. But as you can see here, just sort of just that picture alone, just screams like kind of petulant brat. You got two people at attention, standing upright. One person's got their hands on their hips, kind of slouching. So even just that is sort of, really kind of off-putting. But what I really want to talk to you guys about today is this sort of, I guess, what Berry had to say, is what stuck with me in this particular. We've seen it before. We've seen athletes disrespect the anthem. This one felt a little different to me, and I think it was because I kind of dug into her comments. So one of the things Berry said was, one, she said it felt like it was a setup. She did not expect the anthem to be playing then and got all upset about that. But she came out and she put a T-shirt up over her head that said "Activist Athlete." Yeah. She just flippant, could not care less that the Star Spangled Banner was playing. One of the things she said that stuck out to me, and Eric, I'm going to kick this over to you real quick. Berry claims that the anthem doesn't speak for her. What does that mean? Because that is a prevalent thought in a lot of sort of, I don't want to call them straight up anti-Americans, but the anti-American resentment.
Close enough. You could probably say anti-Americans.
that sense of resentment. What does that mean? Like, where is this coming from? Share some insight on that.
Yeah, It's funny. This kind of ties into, flag burning, where it's all about my desire to make a statement. Of course, flag burning is protected by the Supreme Court in the 1990s, where it's considered a form of activism, right? As I read this story, I brought me back to when my son and I went to Washington, D.C., and we went to the Smithsonian. We saw the huge flag that Francis Scott Key penned the anthem from. The thing is, a couple of stories tall, and it's just so moving to see it. It was restored, 200 years later in this special display in the Smithsonian. The fact that countless, hundreds of thousands of Americans gave their lives through all the various wars and so forth, and to think that the anthem doesn't speak to me, I really boggle at what that statement even means. And the other thing I'll say about this activist athlete is that she is trying out for the Olympics. And what that means is that she is going to be representing her nation on the on the world stage. Yep. So if she wants to just go out and just compete for her own sake, fine. But when she's signing up to everything that requires for you to be an Olympian athlete for the Americans teams, that means that you are standing up for America and what it means. So this is just kind of bizarre behavior for me.
Yeah, that's really what makes this case different than all the other stuff. And during these Olympics, we're going to start to see some more of this anti-American stuff on the world stage, and it's And, you know, we could quite possibly see a lot of our athletes doing stuff like this. And it's going to be embarrassing. It's going to be humiliating. And, you know, to talk about what you're asking, you know, what does it mean that the anthem doesn't speak for her? And that's just going in line with this whole narrative that the left's been pushing about systemic racism, about how the country has always been evil, it's always been oppressing black people, and it's never been better. There was never the civil rights movement didn't really do anything. All it did was push white supremacy into the shadows, but it's still oppressing black people. And, you know, the left's going to continue to push this stuff, and more people are going to believe it, and it's just going to lead to everyone hating this country. So until we lose all the freedoms that we've appreciated so much.
That is a sad thought. All right, so another quote here I want to focus on. This is again from Berry. She did speak to the Washington Post. Obviously, this story blew up. You know, it was a very big deal over the weekend. Berry said, "Sports is entertainment, but my purpose and my voice and mission is bigger than the sport." That is a line of thinking we've been seeing more and more from the left, like specifically celebrities on the left.
Yeah.
It is both just an astounding, like, kind of lack of self-awareness and hubris at the same time. But my question is, you know, as absurd as those types of statements of self-importance are, they seem to be working. Kids look up to these people. You know, kids look up to these athletes as genuine role models. You know, Charles Barkley famously said, you know, you shouldn't look up to pro athletes as role models. I 1,000% agree, and I think that should extend to movie stars. You know, your role model should be your parents. Or parents, you know, there are other good ones out there, but athletes and actors are not among them. So how do we push back on this, Mike? Because this, as annoying as the self-importance is, it's working. So they're only going to, that sense of self-importance will only grow.
Yeah, how do we push back? So, you know, where this comes from is that our culture is so obsessed with, you know, expressive individualism, with pride, like just be your truest self. And where we push back is we say, no, your truest self is never going to be good enough. You need to aspire to be something better. You know, you should always work to better yourself, and you should never be happy with who you are. And I think this just comes down to a messaging thing, and it comes down to a cultural thing. Like, you know, when Christianity was at the core of this nation's, you know, moral founding, and, you know, when that was where everyone got their morals from, we didn't have as much of this. We had more people caring for one another. We had more people trying to be part of a bigger community. You know, churches had a bigger role. And so, you know, politics is downstream of culture, and culture is downstream of religion. I think this all comes back to, you know, trying to get Christianity, trying to get churches back at the core of all these communities, and trying to get people to care about others rather than themselves. So
that's a good point.
Yeah, and I was going to say that, you know, the only reason why we even know the name Gwen Berry is because of what happened.
Yeah.
We would have known who she was. She was the third place bronze winner on this kind of obscure sport that I've never actually seen play professionally. But now we all know her name. And just like you said, Michael, when we get fulfillment from what we achieve with our own bodies, with our own intellect, with our own mind, versus the fulfillment we receive from being a child of God, when we have that disconnect, we really lose some of our humanity. And so all she is now is she is somebody who just seems like a sore loser. Her quote was she felt set up. The fact that you could be on a stage and they played the national anthem and somehow that's offensive.
It's a setup of some sort. I
mean, again, like I said before, I'm just kind of flabbergasted. But she got what she wanted. She got her 15 minutes of fame, and here we are talking about it.
But yes, stop teaching kids that they're perfect just the way they are. That's not true. That's not true for any one person on earth.
Why'd you look at me when you said that? Is it because my new kid?
Father,
Are you kidding me, dude? Speaking of fathers, Joe Biden is one, but
he is a father.
Probably not going to win Father of the Year anytime soon. And you may think we're going to be talking about Hunter Biden, but that is what you call a red herring, my audience. So, Mike, Joe Biden, what's up?
I don't have a story about Joe Biden.
Yeah, you're right.
But I do have a story about Facebook
Monday.
censorship. Just blame the Mondays for that transition. But
Very smooth.
So Section 230. So we've talked about Section 230 a lot on this show. It's basically the protections that allow platforms like Facebook and Twitter, they can't be held liable for something that one of their users posts. If their user posts something that's slanderous or hate speech, Facebook can't be sued for that. The user can. And so that sounds all well and good. But as it turns out, a lot of conservatives have been arguing that Section 230 has provided these platforms with a lot more protections from things that they shouldn't have protections from. And, one of those issues was sex trafficking and allowing sex trafficking to just run rampant on their platforms without doing enough to stop it, to curb it, to shut it down. And so the Texas Supreme Court just recently ruled against Facebook, ruling that they can be held liable for their platform being used by human traffickers to recruit victims. So basically what the judge said was, we do not understand Section 230 to create a lawless no man's land on the internet, in which states are powerless to impose liability on websites that knowingly or intentionally participate in the evil of online human trafficking. Holding internet platforms accountable for the words or actions of their users is one thing. Holding internet platforms accountable for their own misdeeds is quite another thing. That this is particularly the case for human trafficking. And so, this wasn't a thing as of, several years ago, but in 2018, there was a judge that kind of issued some parameters on 230 that basically opened it up so that it could be liable if it allows sex trafficking on its platform. And this has been the case for Facebook, Twitter, where victims of human trafficking have contacted them and said, hey, there are these posts of me on here that I don't want on this platform that human traffickers have put on here. Can you please take them down? And repeatedly, Facebook, Twitter, they have failed to take the post down. Sure, they would take down a post from Donald Trump in like 5 minutes. But when it comes to actual child pornography and all this illegal sex content, no, it takes them weeks, months. Law enforcement has to get involved for them to remove this content. And so what I wanted to ask you guys is basically, do you think we're seeing a turning point for Section 230? Because not that long ago, no one would have guessed that these companies would be held liable, given the state of 230, for content posted by someone else. But now they are being held liable for this. Could they maybe be held liable for breaching other Section 230 rules in the future?
I mean, the most common thing you hear with Section 230 is people who are, whether they're for or against it. The example is sort of like, regulating hate speech on a given platform.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of what people always refer to when they're talking about 230.
Yeah.
So I do wonder, and obviously I'm not a legal expert. I can't even remember the order we're supposed to go on this show. But the way that the Texas Supreme Court worded their decision does make me think that this could definitely have broader implications.
Yeah, and some of the language in there really tells that for me, like knowingly or intentionally participating in something that's illegal.
Yep.
So yeah, that could apply to a lot of different things.
I mean, I guess the tricky part is, and again, this is where legal experts would have to step in to explain this to me, is sort of what happens when we are talking about hate speech, which which can be identified as a hate crime, which in case is illegal. It's sort of like you can find enough loopholes where the worry then is, places like Facebook or whatever, they're just going to stop hosting comments, because it's just, or stop ceasing to function.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm curious. I don't know if this is a turning point for 230, because I think that's actually going to be a very big deal. When the issue of 230 is brought up again, it will be a very big deal. This feels like almost a preliminary kind of like, okay, this is the first thing, and then this will set the precedent for the next time something within 230 is questioned.
Yeah, because it seemed like this invincible shield they've had, and now we're just starting to see a few cracks. Like, you can't do this, you can't do that. What do you think, Eric?
Well, I agree with you, and it's interesting that I've always been kind of for 230 in general, because the only reason why we're able to have these websites is because users are free to post whatever they want to post on it, and the website is just a place for it to be posting. Facebook isn't doing human trafficking, but it's allowing it to happen. So, of course, the devil's in the details. How can you balance the need to have a free and open internet where free communications can occur while still clamping down on crimes. And this, I think, the fact this is going to the Supreme Court in Texas probably will be appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, I think is correct and proper.
Yeah.
If the law as is currently written is not valid or acceptable or wise, then it should go to the Supreme Court for it to be overturned. I'm actually much more in favor than allowing the lobbyists to really push for any kind of reforms for 230. So that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, and we should keep in mind that 230 is very important for protecting internet freedom in a lot of ways. If we 230, basically, if we didn't have 230, we wouldn't have these platforms. Like, Facebook, Twitter, they would be sued nonstop. That being the case, 230 was designed to protect platforms, not publishers. And what we've seen a lot from Twitter, Facebook, a lot of these other companies, is that they're fully willing to editorialize their content. They're willing to ban conservative content mostly, and a lot of liberal content that doesn't fit in with the far left's kind of view of the world, while just allowing left-wing content to run rampant. And so, what do you think it says about these guys that they're it takes them, a lot of these lawsuits, it took them weeks, months, it took them so much time to take down content that they were warned about that had, child pornography in it, that had all these, human trafficking victims in it. They were warned, admins at Facebook, at Twitter were warned multiple times, and yet they still couldn't take down this content. But when it comes to hate speech, if someone issues a complaint about someone saying that men are men and women are women, those things usually get cracked down pretty fast.
Absolutely.
And it amazes me.
You're about to get us banned.
It looks like there is, a hierarchy to these things, and it almost seems as though they prioritize pushing left-wing propaganda over, helping the victims of sex trafficking. And, I just wanted, what do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I mean, you're 100% right. Look, I hate being that guy, like the super cynic guy, but there is a part of me that wonders, like, listen, the left loves porn. Like, they will defend porn to the death. It is without question, it is a statement of fact that porn helps fuel the sex trafficking industry. That is period. I don't think there's any controversy there.
Not here.
All right. So the cynic in me does wonder if, like, maybe they don't want to take down this sex trafficking because, just again, I don't want to get too conspiratorial, but there's, things do fit. Like, there is, and we've seen them. Like, these are not good, upstanding people running Facebook. These are people trying to make a buck.
Yeah.
So I do wonder if, maybe someone, all it takes is one far left voice to say Twitter is anti-porn, they hate sex workers. And then that becomes this whole other issue for Twitter that they'd rather not deal with. So I do wonder, again, the cynic in me does think that there is a part of these guys that is just morally bankrupt. It does not matter to them what damage they may be causing in society because fixing said damage would affect their bottom line. Again, that is an extremely cynical, pessimistic take, but that's kind of where I am with that.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. I remember the last time that Facebook did a check on me was I was writing about gas prices. And because I included something about, this is weeks ago, about Biden basically taking no action to address any of this inflation, which we'll get to in a second.
Yes.
I was Facebook checked on it. And that happened within an hour of it going up live. And it's stuff like this that's now, the person has to repeatedly complain to Facebook, hey, this person is trying to do sex trafficking. No action whatsoever.
Yeah.
But if I'm saying something negative about Biden,
oh man,
an hour later,
they are beholden to their leftist overlords.
Yeah. So what exactly about inflation does Facebook not want our audience to know about?
Well, speaking of Biden inflation, last week I wrote a story on the inflation in general, but specifically on the producers price index. So if you look at inflation, there's really two numbers that economists look at. They look at the CPI, Consumer Price Index, and the PPI, the Producers Price Index. So when we hear inflation, like inflation's at 5% currently, or it was in May, that's the CPI, what the consumers are paying. A lot of that huge had to do with gasoline increases. The gasoline is $1 more a gallon than it was last year. There's this computer chip shortage, which is driving up used car prices. Used car prices are 30% more than they were last year because there's such a dearth of new cars coming on the market. And you can just do energy, commodities, all this stuff is going up. But so, like I said, the CPI was 5% in May. But the interesting number that just came out last week was the PPI. And that is a measure of what producers pay to produce goods and services.
Yeah.
And the PPI was 6.6% in May, the highest in the history of this index. And it's often that the PPI is often used as an indicator of what future inflation will look like. So if the PPI is higher than the CPI, one can expect an increase in the retail investment prices that people are paying. So I will have a chart that I'll put up right now, and you can just see how it's spiking up. It's actually kind of shocking. Like within April and May, it just blew up.
Yeah.
Interesting about this. One of the interesting things about this number is that it's really the value of goods. Services really didn't increase, so that indicates that labor is not the primary cause for driving this this number. I'm going to get to the Biden administration in a little bit, but I just have a quick question for you guys. A lot of people are saying that this is a brief. Oh, and real quick before we get to that, let's do the CPI really quick as well, so people can really get an understanding. So this is what consumers are facing over the last 12 months. Just this increase in prices.
Yeah.
It's just, as you can see,
buying power.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We talk about increasing the minimum wage. Well, the minimum wage is $7.75, but right now it's $7.61 buying power, what it was a year ago. So that shows you there's a real pain in this inflation. Quick question I have, is this just a blip, or are we looking for a long-term increase in prices? Or is this just like a one-time oddity?
I mean, I don't know that I have no reason to believe that this is going to just stop all of a sudden. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it might just be a blip, but it seems like, and I'm sure you're going to get into some of the Biden stuff, but I have no reason to believe, based on what Biden is saying, that this is going to stop anytime soon. And, they're just going to continue to basically steal from the American consumer by just, inflating the dollar.
Yeah. Sony already told me not to expect abundant PlayStation 5s until next year. No, hold on. There's an actual correlation here.
Sure.
One of the reasons they have a shortage is because of the same chip that, is the reason cars are more expensive is the same thing they use for the PS5. So it does all affect them. But, since Sony's already told me not till next year, I'm not expecting this to go away for at least a year.
Absolutely. Well, and it's funny when you look at the housing market as well. I mean, the median price for houses is $380,000, the highest on record. And when we see the moratoriums, the foreclosure moratoriums finally be lifted, are we going to see a rush of houses coming in the market? Are we going to see a crash? And so it's really a dangerous time. People really probably should be saving, holding on to their money, and not spending too much. But to go back to my earlier point on Biden, gentlemen, the silence from Biden is deafening. I have searched long and hard for any kind of quotes that Biden has said. Anytime he actually the word inflation, he uttered that word. I could be wrong, but I can't find it anywhere.
Wow.
The Hill reported that the Biden administration officials are insisting that the recent inflationary spike will be temporary. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell says inflation is a long way off. Quote, "We will not raise interest rates preemptively because we fear the possible onset of inflation. We will wait for evidence of actual inflation or other imbalances." I don't know what numbers Powell are looking at. The two charts we just threw up there seem very evidence of actual inflation. So, gentlemen, my question to you is, why does the administration have such a hands-off approach on inflation? Brian, let's go with you.
That's a tough one. I'm going to say they have a hands-off approach with it right now because they are, at least to me, it feels like they are very much in sort of like a standby mode. Like, not to say I know what's coming next. Again, the conspiratorial side of me thinks it's Kamala Harris, but it does feel like part of the general strategy with Biden's first and possibly only term as president is to keep him in Tupperware and only take him out when absolutely necessary. And I think part of that is just to avoid, if Biden was, no, actually, let me rephrase that. When Biden gets pressed on anything, we see him get heated. We saw him snap at the CNN reporter, Caitlin Collins, at the G7 summit. So, Biden just, I think part of it is they need to keep Biden's answers to why things are not going well, they need to minimize that, like to the best of their ability, and that's what they're doing. So they don't want to talk about inflation because that is red meat for Biden's staunchest critics to latch onto. Even though they don't seem to realize that by not speaking about it, his staunchest critics are still latching onto that. But yeah, I think that's part of what it is. The White House doesn't want to touch a complicated subject that will likely paint Biden in a negative light.
Michael, what are your thoughts?
I think he's trying to pull one over on the American people. Like he knows it's going to be beneficial to him to just keep printing off more money and more money and more money. And he also knows that it's going to hurt Americans when, every day it's going to cost that much more for them to buy everything. But he doesn't care. And, people don't realize the effects of inflation. They don't really understand what's going on. When it's directly through taxes, when there's a tax hike, then they can go, oh yeah, that's Biden's fault. Let's blame him. But when he just prints off a bunch of money and prices just mysteriously start to rise, he doesn't really get as much blame. So I think, he knows what he's doing and he's going to keep doing it as long as he can get away with it.
Yeah. What I wrote about last week was just looking at our national debt, $28 trillion. Ooh. Every single taxpayer would have to write a check for a little over $250,000 to pay off the debt. Yeah. We see an administration and a Congress.
No.
We see an administration and a Congress that has no desire to rein in spending. Absolutely not. And so it's interesting to me, the thing I pointed out in my article is this actually on purpose? Is Biden allowing inflation to soar as a way to tackle the debt?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's absolutely what's happening.
Yeah. And it's just crazy to me because that just wipes out people's real world income, wipes out retirement savings and all that. Just because he wants to be the one who signed a $6 trillion infrastructure bill.
And Milton Friedman's done a lot of good work just kind of like breaking this down and explaining it for just everyday people who aren't economists to understand. But basically, this is just taxation without representation. Like they're getting all the money they need from the people, and they don't have to. It's not with a policy or anything. They're just printing off more money, and that's how it's happening. So.
Absolutely.
Well, one place that is not printing off money is probably your bedroom or wherever it is that you're watching this show. So with that in mind, I was able to convince my higher-ups to give you all of our lovely viewers, a special discount to subscribe to Western Journal. You can go to westernjournal.com/join. You can head over there, help support real journalism, guys. All jokes aside, this is actually important to the mission we have. We want to bring you the truth, and heading to that site will help us do that. So in return for heading to that link that you see on the screen there, I've convinced my bosses to allow anyone who subscribes for the whole year. So if you become an annual subscriber, you basically get 2 months free. So you're paying for 10 months, you get 2 free. That is probably the opposite of inflation. That is the opposite of what our president is trying to do to us. So with that being said, just a friendly reminder, this is WJ Live powered by the Western Journal. You can catch us every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. Thank you so much for joining us today, guys, and we will see you all Wednesday. Take care.
Bye, guys.
Josh, did you hear? They're putting the Libertarian back on the podcast.
No.
Oh? You didn't see the calendar?
No.
You should talk to Kayla about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, who's on the show Tuesday?
You and Joe.
Yeah. Like he's back.
Yeah, no. You and Joe.
The Libertarian?
Yeah, Libertarian Joe.
He's not back.
You should just go in the studio and check it out.
You're messing with me.
Okay.
Okay. Nice joke, Kayla. Got me to go to the studio.
Oh.
No!